All right, we are live. Antonio, good to have you here.
Thank you very much. I genuinely appreciate the invitation. I hope your viewers and listeners get something valuable out of today. Thank you so much.
For sure. I'm going to turn off this classy jazz music.
Okay. Well, an evening at Ronnie Scott. Do you know Ronnie Scott?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Classy jazz music for a classy guy. I'm gonna play that great promo we had, and then we'll get into a live little dialogue here. Bear with me. Here we go. All right, well, here we are. So welcome, everybody. And I'll give a quick overview, and then we'll get into some dialogue. So for those of you turning into Coach's Corner for the first time, what is this? Well, I thought it was an opportunity to really talk with coaches, demystify what coaches are and how they operate. There's so many different kinds of them out there. So let's dig in and think about, well, what is coaching? If you're a coach, how can you up your game? If you're somebody who's considering coaching, what could it do for you? And we'll evolve the conversation around that. And then tonight's special guest, Antonio Garrido, I will give you a quick intro. First of all, just good to have you here. How are you today?
I'm terribly well, thank you. Again, thank you for the invitation. I hope I bring some value to your gang.
I'm sure you will. And for everybody out there, quick overview. Antonio is in the scorching hot heat of Miami currently and is looking forward to a little cool evening ahead. He is someone who's built his own business around coaching, has been a coach for many, many, many years, and is running a business where he's got 12 coaches who he's trained and developed. And for Sandler, if you guys are familiar, is one of the top Sandler entities globally. So that's pretty cool. I won't tout you too much. He's also got some best-selling books and other things, and we're going to talk about as much of that as we can put into this little conversation.
I was rather enjoying that. Can you carry on?
Yeah, I've got a whole list. I could read the whole bio if you
No, don't, because I'm sure it's only interesting to me.
I don't know. Yeah.
Other perhaps.
Very good. Well, this is just going to be a fun back and forth. I've gotten to know you over the past months, I would say, and it's always been a dynamic exchange. I've been always impressed with some of your approaches, your techniques, your knowledge. So clearly, I've liked that, and I know there's a lot of value for what we can flush out inside of a conversation.
Well, no pressure. Thank you.
Yeah.
I always try and bring value, and I always. I have an opinion of the world that we occupy. So whether you're a coach or a coachee or a mentor or whatever it is, hopefully well, if nothing else, I'll share the world according to Antonio, and hopefully you'll find some value in there somewhere. You get your scanning electron microscope out and look hard enough, but hopefully there'll be something.
That would be valuable and perfect. I may be a little distracted for a second as I want to make sure that this is now live on Facebook, which it is, which is good. And then I want to throw it into my and your pages. So I'm going to share this as well.
You need a producer.
Well, that's the next step, right? Yeah.
Let's get you a producer.
I think... well, maybe that's a voice out there right now in this conversation.
Yeah. Who do you know that's looking to produce the Coach's Corner?
Share to a page. I am going to share this to my page. Now I figure. See, we're always working out bells and whistles here. Bear with me, Antonio. I just want to make sure we... it's going in the right direction because a lot of valuable content will be coming.
What's an itchy nose? What does that mean? I wonder.
Yeah, that's a sign, right? Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah. It'll be a sign of something. Probably. I'm about to sneeze, but
Well, maybe give us a little lay of the land of what it's like in Toronto, Miami right now as I'm working through this little thing right here.
so we're about just gone 7:05 in the evening. The sun is about to set, probably about 10, 15 minutes away. We have it's slightly overcast today. Normally, we would be witness to a beautiful sunset. So I don't actually think I'm going to see it today. I'm looking out the window where it normally lives, and I think there's kind of some clouds in the way. It's probably still, it's probably 78 degrees. So it's still warm, right?
Yeah.
Because in Miami and we're on the equator practically, and it's June. So, but it's dry, but
All right, I will save you from going into further weather commentary.
okay.
We're good now, so we're all set, full
All right.
speed ahead.
Okay, let's go.
I thought we'd start off. I mean, maybe we can go in any direction. I know there's so much content we can go into, but maybe give us a little of your background. How did you get into managing the business you do, building the business you do, so that everybody watching can see what's available. I know you've had an interesting progression to how you gotten to where you are.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, I'll try and keep it, as I said, relatively short because it's probably only interesting to me and my mum. I first came, as soon as I say these words, that they sound bad in my head, they're going to sound worse as they come out of my mouth. When I first came out of university a million years ago, I was an architect, right? So that's what I was originally designed to do, was to design. And by luck than judgment, I found myself running or working for an incredibly inspired CEO who really, he and I really connected incredibly well. And he kept promoting me every 5 minutes. And before I knew it, I was running a division. He then said, hey, listen, you need to go to uni and study leadership and study marketing and study strategic, business management and so on. So he sent me back to uni. My second degree was in strategic management, marketing, and all of those kinds of things. And then I just consistently worked for larger and larger and larger and larger companies, kept moving up the map till eventually, my career was such that I ran what you might call here in America, I ran 4 Fortune 60 companies, right? So enormous organizations with thousands and thousands of people and billions in revenue. And then one day I was offered, and so I did, and then I was also doing consulting for the British government, for the National Health Service and so on. So I'd always thought that I ought to run my own business. My father is Spanish, right? And he never went to school. He was a shepherd in the middle of Spain, and there's some great stories I could tell you about that one day. But he was very kind of poor and disadvantaged people. They become very philosophical. It's kind of how you deal with the world, right? So he had a rather unique way of looking at the world, and he kind of instilled that, not educated, because he didn't know a lot of things, but he was incredibly insightful and incredibly smart. But it actually didn't know facts, right? The stuff that we learn at school. So we know, for example, that the moon goes around the earth and the earth goes around the sun, and we know what gravity is. You're not born knowing that stuff. Somebody's taught you all of that stuff. Well, he never had any of that as a framework, as a background to his thinking.
Right.
So he described things to us in a really unique way. And so there is a Spanish expression. He always had his own business because he could never kind of really work for anybody else. And long story, but he would always say to us, it's better to be the head of a mouse than the tail of a lion, right?
Yeah.
The head of a mouse.
I like that one. That's one thing you're always good for, is a lot of quippy little sayings that I've come to appreciate from you. Yeah. Right. I'd rather be the head of a mouse than the tail of a lion. I'm going to keep that one up in the memory. Okay.
And this lived with me for a long time. And I knew that I was working for enormous companies, making them tons of money. And this, I began to find irksome. And we would have this kind of running kind of dialogue with my dad, and he'd say, how was work today? And I'd say, oh, terrible, I've been fired, right? Which of course wasn't true. And he
Yeah.
would say, good, the best thing that can happen to you, right? Because go do your own thing, you know, run your own enterprise, run your own company. So I had that going for years and years with all of these kind of expressions, you know, in my, running through my head, all of this scripting from when I was a child, right? And we all know, coaches and so on, we all know about scripting. So
Yeah.
anyway, one thing led to another, and I was offered a job looking after an organization, and I was actually looking after Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and the Pacific Rim. And the CEO said, oh, and don't forget, you know, if you take the job, the first thing is you need to be trained. And I said, save yourself the money, you know, I don't need to be trained. He said, yeah, you need to be trained and you need to have a coach. And I went, no, honestly, that's save your money, right? And he went, no,
Yeah.
everybody here is trained. And I went, but you know, what can you, I know everything that there is to know, right? I mean, awful, right? And he went, no, you don't understand. You either, when you join this company, everyone at C-suite has a coach and everyone gets trained. And I said, well, trained in what? And they said, Sandler, right? We're going to get you a Sandler coach. We're going to teach you Sandler stuff. That's, you know,
And so how long timeline wise, where is that right now? How long ago was that?
I'm now probably about 12 years in the past, or whatever that looks like, right? So you
Okay.
do the maths, right?
Yeah.
So 12 or 13 years ago. And he said, no, that's what we do. So I said, okay, well, where have I got to go to get the training? So he said, well, Dallas. Their head office was, their global head office was in Dallas. So okay, cool. So that's when I was introduced to having a coach. I'd never hitherto had one. And, you know, the Sandler leadership process and all of that kind of stuff. And I fell in love. And I was the biggest critic. You know, I was the like, I don't need it. Save your money. It's not
Yeah.
for me, right? And I genuinely didn't think, and I was, as I said, running very large enterprises, right? Thousands of people. But I'd learned from the best, not least, as I said, my dad, and I had some incredibly inspirational chairmen and CEOs. And so I was really, really, really fortunate. Anyway, so I met the kind of the Sandler world, and I just fell in love with this stuff. And then I was responsible to drive this kind of culture through Europe, the Middle East, and the Pacific Rim, and just fell in love with it. There came a time then, about 10 years ago, 9, 10, 11 years ago, when I thought to myself, you know, I think it's time now to be the head of a mouse than the tail of a lion, right? So I actually, my brother was living in Miami, here in Miami, and he was working for AstraZeneca, which is a large pharmaceutical company. He was like the CFO for South America. And so every time I came to Dallas, I would come to Miami and see my brother, my niece, and my nephew, and all of that kind of nonsense. And I decided, by the way, is this too long a story?
We'll work on the concision in another time, but this is good.
Oh, right. So I actually said to him, hey, listen, find me a business to buy. You know, Miami's pretty cool. Well, you know, yeah. So we were about to be empty nesters. We had 4 children. They were all about to go off to university. We're living in an enormous house in the UK. And I thought, let's do something let's really get outside our comfort zone. Let's start our own business. My wife had her own business for about 26 years. Anyway, so we found a pool cue company to buy. You know, pool cues?
Yeah.
So cool. Years before, I was offered a job for a chocolate manufacturer, right? We couldn't kind of make the deal work. And it was CEO for a chocolate manufacturer. And I let that job go ultimately because we couldn't get the numbers right. But I always thought I was going to be like Willy Wonka and chocolate rivers and Oompa Loompas running all over the place. And never kind of let that go. So I thought, we found this pool cue company. I thought, yeah, I'll do that. Anyway, so I then contacted, when we found this company to buy, I then contacted Sandler, my coach, and said, I'm leaving. And he said, what do you mean you're leaving? I said, yeah, that's it. You know, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to go and open a pool cue manufacturer in Miami.
Yeah.
I go, Miami? What are you talking about, Miami? Because I was in the UK at the time, right? So he called me back 10 minutes late. He said, I'll call you back. Put the phone down. Called me back 10 minutes later and said, you're not going to make pool cues in Miami. You're going to open our office. You're going to open the Miami office for us.
Ah, yeah.
Am I though, really? Because I think I'm making pool cues. And he goes, no, you're going to do this. I went, okay. So if that's what my coach tells me I'm going to do, that's what I'm going to do. I told my wife, and she said, yes, of course you are. That's the perfect thing for you to do. And then landed in Miami didn't have a little black book, didn't have a social security number, didn't have anything. I just showed up and thought, well, what could possibly go wrong? And of course, everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong. But by luck and good wind and probably very little by judgment, we've built an amazingly strong business, multi-million-dollar business in the last 6.5 years, and it's been a riot. It's been a hoot. I loved it. I wish I'd done it earlier.
That's amazing. How did you hadn't coached before? I mean, you'd clearly a lifelong of leadership, but had you been a coach prior to just jumping into that?
Not a formal coach, not a formalized, not a trained coach. I'd always been kind of mentored rather than coached by my chairman. I'd spend a lot of time trying to coach my people, recognizing, it kind of intuitively, I don't know where it came from, but again, probably my dad, recognizing that, you get the best out of people, not by managing them, which I call the use of directed authority. So not by managing them, rather by coaching them, rather by guided discovery, rather by helping them discover what the solution might be. So that's kind of stamped to my DNA, I think.
Yeah.
And so when I had a coach, when the company got me a coach, I was like, oh, it could kind of like put names and forms to the things that I had been doing, my MO. And then when I then became, officially trained and did all the coaching, courses and so on, I enjoyed those mainly. This is going to sound awful and terribly conceited, and I don't mean it to. When I was officially coach trained, gave me the perfect blueprint of the things not to do.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think most of the coaching training is singularly dreadful, right? And I think the good stuff that they teach you, see, the most successful coaches, in the same way that the most successful, let's say, immigration attorneys or accountants or whatever it is, lawyers, they are not successful by dint of the fact that they know more coaching theory than anybody else, or that they know some immigration laws that some other immigration attorneys don't. So the most successful practices are not to do with either coaching or immigration law or real estate law or accountancy or architect or dentistry. The most successful practices are successful because they know how to grow a business, as opposed to concentrate on the coaching or the accountancy or the immigration law. So it occurred to me that coaching is just what we do, right? Yeah. Just what we deliver. But my job in my company is to grow the most successful company I can. And so I concentrate more on business development than I do on coaching. Right. And most coaches I know think, they kind of think from field of dreams, build it and they will come. And they think, if I just turn into a tremendous coach, I will get referrals and testimonials and my business will grow, which, you and I could both point to 10,000 coaches where that isn't the case. And so when I'm coaching coaches, one of the things I coach them least on is how to coach. What I coach the most on is how to build a coaching business. And they're not the same thing.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious about that. I like the way this has gone in terms of the direction. You need to have a certain level of aptitude as a coach, but it's really about focusing on building the business, is what you're saying?
Yeah, let's assume, because I know some tremendous coaches who are broke.
Yeah.
And that's such a shame, because they don't expose the world to they don't allow their the world to be exposed to their level of brilliance, right?
Right.
And it's such a shame.
And
And
that's
so, and I know some incredibly wealthy coaches who really, you know, as far as the coaching skill is concerned, it's questionable at best. So,
that's that's just what I find with a lot of coaches I talk to who are sometimes struggling. It's that they might be really good coaches, but the business development side of it is tough. Especially, I mean, you could think of any practice though, whether it's in the medical field or otherwise. You're a specialist at something. You're really, really good.
yeah,
But unless somebody knows about it, or unless you have a great marketing or referral stream, you're in a tough position.
exactly, exactly. So then what happens is, before long, you devalue your own offering because you try and quote unquote buy business, and then you set for yourself, rates that are unsustainable. And I know so many coaches living hand to mouth, and it's heartbreaking. And so, figure out how to be a good coach. Great. And once you've figured that out, a lot of coaches say to me as well, they say things like, and they believe they've been put on the world to make the world a better place and to help people out. And
That's my mantra.
and so my answer to that is, right, I love it. Charge what you're really worth, make a ton of money, and give half of it to charity. Give half of it to great causes, and get to heaven that way, right?
Yeah.
So build a business that's sustainable, that is that doesn't need you in it, right, to run it.
Yeah.
Stop selling coaching. Start building processes that are sustainable whilst you're not there.
Yeah.
And charge what you're worth. I mean, there's a lot to it. So how do you find high value clients that are prepared to pay, what it is that, that's a whole conversation for our next session.
Yeah.
Right. But most coaches are very well meaning, incredibly talented. They're almost like the struggling, starving artist. And I think that's heartbreaking, and they shouldn't be. And I don't want to die starving. I just don't. Right. And so coaching is great, but it's the least of what you do. What you should do, is concentrate more on developing your business and the business growth processes, and then develop your coaching prowess. Make sense?
Now, do you get a lot of, I mean, it's almost counterintuitive, and I bet a lot of people would find it that way. Do you get a lot of pushback on that? And how do you respond in terms of them saying, well, yeah, but I just want to be a coach? I know you talked a little bit about it. Well, make a lot of value, donate a lot, all of that. But how do you get somebody who's on the edge of that over that hurdle?
I think the first thing that's a great question. I think the first thing to do is because we train a lot of coaches too, right? So we find coaches and we train them, and honestly, the best coaches were never coaches, right? We'll teach them how to coach afterwards.
Yeah.
But because genuinely, the coaching is the least of it. And I know there are coaches listening who are outraged by this, but grow the business so that you can then, help lots and lots of people. The first thing I have coaches do is recognize their own value, right? I don't think you can do this until you really believe, right down to, to the soles of your feet, and then it's stamped on your DNA, the real value of working with you and how you can help people in enormous and magical ways. Because if you did believe that, you wouldn't charge the outrageously low fees that you do charge.
Yeah.
And the way that I look at it, the way that I position it in the coaches that we coach, most coaches seem to have a very skewed money concept, right? And they think, well, the coaches that look a little bit like me, they charge this much, and so I need to charge that much. And you know, if you look and smell and act and feel and sound and behave and taste like all of the other coaches, how are you going to get treated just the same?
Yep.
So I used to have another boss that said, whilst everybody zigs, you must zag, right? And so, and a really good point of differential between one coach and another coach is the outrageous astronomical, hourly rate that he charges. So that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
And you don't have to spend your time persuading a client or a prospect that you are worth that money. That's not your job to do. They have to persuade you that they need the help, right?
Yeah.
So, and then
I think you're touching on something. I know where it's kind of going, so maybe I'll just highlight it a little bit. You know, it's hard to make a leap from charging X number of dollars to say 10x number of dollars. And then the question I was going to ask, and I think you're getting towards, is, well, how do you create that value? And now you're saying, well, you actually don't need to voice that value. It comes towards you as you're, is it validating or actually
yeah,
propping them down, demonstrating that you know them, or how does that work?
yeah. So the first thing is believe in your own value, right? So you have to believe in the value that you can bring. If you don't believe the value you can bring, when you say your price, ultimately you give your quotation and you flinch and you cringe, you're blown it, right? So you got to believe your own value, number one. Number two, change your thinking from, you know, as I said, we've all got a slightly skewed money concept. Just don't think of it as money. Think of it as tokens of appreciation, right? So they're not giving us, you know, it just happens that the token of appreciation all have a dead president's head printed on them, right? So that's it. And they'll pay us by some tokens of appreciation with dead presidents on, but they'll also pay us with referrals and testimonials and all of this good stuff and connect us to their, you know, network at the highest level. Okay, great. Now, if I try and persuade somebody that I'm worth X amount of dollars, and I think you and I in the past, David, have talked about how much I can charge for what we do. We charge for what we do. If I try and persuade somebody of that, I can never persuade somebody of that. Why? Because you can never persuade anybody of anything anyway.
Yeah.
So your job as a coach is to, through a process of guided discovery, have them say to themselves, this is the guy. This is not just another vendor, just not another coach vendor. This is a different animal. And they have to say to themselves, this guy is a trusted advisor. And the route to trusted advisor status lies in your mentality, your mindset, and the way that you have conversations with people. And so that you ask them questions that nobody else asks them. So they say to themselves, man, that's a good question. You challenge them like nobody else has challenged them. And when they say to themselves, man, that's a great question, I've never thought of it that way before, your value goes up. And so I never try and persuade anybody to have me be their coach. I would rather say, I won't use this language, but I would rather say, you tell me why I should spend my time with you, right? Now, you think, well, conceptually, I get it, but how do you do that, right? And genuinely, it's in the questions that you ask. It's in the
that segues into your book a little bit.
A rather tremendous book that no one's
But before we get there, because I'm just trying to maybe tweak out some of what you just said, is like, say you are that coach who's not a trusted advisor. You've distinguished in this conversation or another conversation that you're not doing that, and you're not skilled in doing that. So you have your baseline business, you're servicing your clients. What do? You have to get some training to be skilled in that so that you can elevate your game. But in the meantime, you probably need to continue as is, or what would be your recommendation for somebody in that situation?
So the first thing I would say is be intentional about the kind of business that you want to build. So what do I mean by that? So if I were coaching like a VP of sales or a CEO of an organization, I'd say, let me see your business plan, right? And they would have a business plan that basically was incredibly detailed, that said that, here's our strengths and opportunities and threats, and there's a marketing plan and there's some strategy to it, and we're going to have this much revenue come from these many clients and this much revenue come from it, right? A business plan, right? And when you have a business plan and you got your core values and you got your vision and mission and goals, and when you got all of that kind of stuff, and that's your compass and that's how you, right? Then I talk to coaches who coach CEOs, all of this stuff. And I say to coaches, let me see your business plan. Cricket, right? And I think, physician, heal thyself, right?
Yeah.
Practice what you preach, right? Walk the talk, right?
Yep.
So first thing is, if you're going to be a coach, you're going to be a business coach, you're going to be a professional coach, then act like it.
Yeah.
Write a business plan. Write a business plan that says this much revenue is going to come from these A flying customers. This much revenue is going to come from these guys. This much revenue is going to come from these guys. So a good mix of revenue from a good spread of business is sensible and it is correct. So to answer your question, if somebody's already got like a baseline business, great. You don't have to sacrifice or any of that. What you need to do is keep adding on top to the point that you can start what we call bottom slicing, right? So we all know we've got the nightmare customer, right? The nightmare guy that we coach, right? And the reason that we don't get rid of them is because we've got nothing better to replace it with. So
let's like that 80-20 rule, right? Where you're spending the wrong time in the wrong places.
Right. So let's start moving up. Let's go for more of those A client customers. But you're not going to go there overnight. You're not going to go to multi-million-dollar revenues overnight. It takes some time, but at least be intentional about it and say, in this quarter, in the next quarter that's coming up, in the next quarter, I'm going to get one of them. And then you need a plan to do that. The next quarter, I'm going to get another one. Then I'm going to have two. The next quarter, I'm going to get two, and then I'm going to have four. And before you know it, because time is our biggest resource block, right? You can then get rid of the smaller guys underneath. And before you know it, the whole balance of your business has shifted up, right? You just got to be very, very intentional about it. And before you know it, you're then thinking, I got all of these C players. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to hire a coach that works for me to manage all of those. And I'm going to help him grow his own book of business too.
Yeah. It's almost like, now I'm just hearing it, financial advisory networks and things like that. Like, now I'm going to bring in other advisors to manage.
Of course. Here's the other thing so you're a coach, right?
Yeah.
You'll be amazed how many coaches I speak to don't have a coach. How can you say to somebody, how can you credibly take money off somebody as a coach and not have a coach? Because either coaches are worthwhile or they're not worthwhile. And if you're selling coaching as a credible, enterprise, credible,
you have to be the product.
Get yourself a coach. So in our language, we say you got to eat your own. You've got to eat your own dog food. You can't say to people, nobody's perfect. Everyone is on a journey, and we can all get better. And then say, oh, that's for everybody else apart from me. Right? That's just not credible, right? So get yourself a coach. Get the best coach you can get your arms around. The best coach. I don't care how good a coach you are. I talk, I was going to say I like football. So soccer, as you would call it, right?
Yeah, football.
Right? So if I said to somebody, who is the best soccer player in the world? Some lunatics would say Cristiano Ronaldo played, right? But
you're trying to offend some people, I know.
But Lionel Messi is the right answer. But actually, Lionel Messi isn't the answer to who's the best soccer player in the world. Lionel Messi is the answer to who's the best left-footed, forward, right? How good a goalkeeper would Lionel Messi be? A disaster. He's 5'8", right? And the goalkeeper's like 6'7", right? So he's a tremendous striker, but a dreadful defender or midfielder or goalie, right? But even though he's the best in the world, what does he do every day? He has a coach that he talks to every single day. And you're not going to tell me that anybody listening to this thinks they're as good a coach as Lionel Messi is a soccer player, right?
Yeah.
And so if Lionel Messi, who is one of the best in the world ever, same with Usain Bolt, same with Tiger Woods, same with Roger Federer, if they talk to a coach every day, why can't you, right?
Yeah.
Now, you might trade training or something for coaching. You might coach them and they might coach you. I don't know. Figure something out. But get yourself a business. Back to your question, right? So get
Yeah.
yourself a business plan, right? And make it a work of pure genius. Every word. You know, what's your vision, your mission? What's your goal? What are your core values, right? If you're a coach and you don't know those things, I'm saying you're a fraud, right?
Yeah.
And so if you don't have a business plan and you're talking to the CEO every day about his business plan, then you're a fraud. If you don't have a coach and you're telling your clients how great it is to have a coach, then you're a fraud. If you don't intentionally grow your business and yet you're coaching everybody else to, then you're a fraud.
Yeah.
If you're telling your clients to put their prices up and you're not, then you're a fraud. You get the idea,
Yeah.
right? And so, you can't, you either mean it or you don't. If you don't, go and be a florist. The world needs bus drivers, and that's perfectly okay, right? And I don't mean that in a horrible way. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're going to be a coach, be the best coach you can possibly be.
Yeah.
Charge the best that you can possibly charge. Grow the biggest and the best. Now, there could be some people saying, no, Antonio, that's not me. I just want a cottage industry and I just want to be the local blacksmith. Cool. Be the local blacksmith. That's not what I want to be. That's not the business I want to grow. I want to grow a legacy. I want to grow a business that in 2 years, and I'm not that old, I look it, but I just sleep with the window open, that in 2 years, right,
Yeah.
I can retire and this business keeps rocking and rolling without me, right? And there will be people that want to leave a legacy, leave it to the children, that want to sell it. And most coaches I know cannot sell the business because the business needs them in it. They are the business. They are the business. And then you think to yourself, you're not a coach, you're a window cleaner, right? And you're a window cleaner that calls yourself a coach. And that's not what I want my coaches to be. Now, I'm not denigrating anybody. If you have a different model and you just want to make the world a better place and you just want to do what you can to keep everybody lovely and that's great, but that's not who I am. That's not what I do. And
Yeah.
my clients are.
Well, let me jump in real quick. I mean, I'm just absorbing all this, and I love it. I'm intrigued by it. I'd love to just maybe dive a little bit more focused on a couple of just questions that I have.
Cool.
More specific to your business is, you have 12 coaches. What do you do? Are you coaching some of the? I know you coach CEOs and like high level executives. You're also coaching your coaches. What services are you guys providing as a broader spectrum? Is it coaching on individuals' performances, coaching on business plans, coaching on sales?
Yeah, so great question. So the best way I've ever heard, the best way that I've ever kind of verbalized to describe it. There are a lot of consulting and coaching companies that, in my view, go an inch deep and a mile wide. Right? They try and be all things to everybody and offer a whole range of stuff. In my experience, it's better to go an inch wide and a mile deep, right? So become the real subject matter expert on maybe 3 or 4 things only. Don't try and be all things to all people, which actually means that oftentimes, a lot of times, we say no, right? When somebody says, can you help us with that? We go, no, but I'll find somebody. If you want me to find somebody, we will do. So back to your question. So we do strategic customer care, so like customer service training. We do sales training, sales management training, and then we do leadership training and coaching. So we do only those things, right? If you came to us and say, hey, will you do a strategic business audit about, if they throw enough money at it, right, so that we can be bothered to be distracted, yeah. But typically, no. A lot of people ask us, they'll say, for example, we also do some recruiting sometimes, but when we do our recruiting, I'm going to be careful how I say that in case of any of my recruiting clients on the are listening, but we make it not very attractive for them to ask us to do it, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm not ignoring you. I'm checking to see if there's any comments from our
yeah.
But keep going.
So you know, we spend most of our time going whale hunting, right? In our language, we actually say we define, and this comes back to your original question, I think. We define, not only do we define our business plan and all of that kind of stuff, we also define what is an ideal client. What does the perfect client for us look like? And we call it, what's our blue gumball, right? That's just kind of our language, right? So,
Yeah.
right, when you go to the gumball machine and you put
want the blue gumball. Yeah.
Huh?
You want the blue gumball. Absolutely.
Right. And we don't want anyone that isn't the blue gumball. So when somebody comes, when a red gumball says, hey, can you come and help us do this? No, because before you know it, it's mission creep. We lose our way. We don't know what our vision is. We don't know what our mission is. And we try to be all things. When you try to be all things to everybody, you end up being nothing to anybody, right? And it's, somebody said to me, a waiter years ago said this to me. And I know he didn't coin it, but I always remember when he said it to me, we were talking about, he was a waiter in a restaurant. We were talking about something, I don't know, whatever you talk to waiters about, politics or whatever. And I said, that's really interesting. What makes you say that? And he said, well, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, right? And he kind of said this thing. And I thought, well, that's a really nice way of thinking about stuff. So one of the things that we do is we absolutely define what our ideal client looks like. Once we've figured that out, then we think, well, where do they go? Where do they hang out? Who do they talk to? What language do they use? Where do I find them? How do I get referred to that person? We're just super intentional. We either stare at the phone, aggressively willing it to ring, right? That's, you know, we kind of light a candle and say a prayer and hope that things get good. But, you know, one of the things I say to my clients and to me, hope is not exactly a high growth strategy, right? So
I got to write all these down. I'm going to go back through the video. I'm going to get all these euphemisms, and we could probably write a book on all of them about sales.
Do you know, I think I might. So, yeah. But it's true, right? And how many coaches do we know that just quote and hope and say a prayer and cross the fingers and just hope it's BS, right? You know me well enough to know I'm really cleaning up my language for today.
Yeah. You preempted that earlier on, and I said go for it though, so I have no problem with it.
Well, so the other thing is decide your core values, vision, mission, goals, right? Your KPIs, your business plan, the sectors, the size of the markets, and really define your clients. When you figured all of that out, then go get them, right? And if you're a professional coach and you don't have all of that, and yet you're preaching that to your commercial clients, then I don't have a lot of time for you, right? Because that's just not right. That's not right. That's like the heart surgeon drinking a bottle of whiskey every night and is on 20 fags a night, right? I don't know that I want that guy as my heart surgeon, right? You know what I mean?
Preaching all your health what you should be doing. Well, that's what my dad always used to say. He said, do as I say, not as I do.
Right. Well, that's great, isn't it? That is great. Do you know, I wish all of that's going to, can I get that license plate? Can I get it? Most of my clients don't do what I say because I never tell them to do anything.
Right. Well, that's a good one. I want to segue into the ask questions. Can we do that, or do you want to?
No, yeah, cool.
All right. Yeah. I'm just gonna pull it up so people can see the book if I have it here. I believe I do. Let me see here. There it is. So that's the book right there.
Amazon and all your good bookstores. So here's the thing. Can I talk about that just for a quick second?
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's see if we can get a few basics in the time that we have left. So
that's what I wanted to do. I think this, just asking questions in general, is a skill that a lot of people could really improve. And at a base level, that doesn't matter who you are, whether you're a coach, whether you're in sales, all of that, it's all relevant to universal audience.
Right, a parent, anything. So So oftentimes I'll say to when I'm talking to coaches and when I'm talking to anybody really, so I'll ask you, David, uh, what percentage of the time do you think our prospects, right, or one of your prospects, or somebody that may be in need of a coach, right? What percentage of the time do you think our prospects tell us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? What percentage of the time do you think?
50%. Maybe that's aggressive.
I think that's generous, but it doesn't really matter what the number is. And I've asked that question of thousands of people, and it's ranged from 0 to not very much. Nobody has ever said 100% because we know that that's not true.
Yeah.
So if they're not telling us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and there's a lot of logic, there's a lot of science behind why they don't, in the same way that we don't, right? When we're buying stuff, right? So we'll talk about that another day. But if they don't tell us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, I think our first priority is to get to the truth, because otherwise we can't prescribe. We can't prescribe a solution without getting to the truth. The problem is they don't want to tell us the truth.
Right.
Why don't they want to tell us the truth? Because they play their cards close to the chest. Why? Because they don't trust us yet. And so how do we build rapport? How do we challenge them? How do we get them to trust us? How do we get to the truth? Again, we can light a candle and say a prayer, or we can ask some really, really, really good questions. And I believe that if we ask crappy, same as everybody else kind of questions, then there's no value in us. So our value is derived from the questions that we ask. Trusted advisors ask really, 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 really good questions. And we're a coach. So what's our job? Our job is to ask people questions such that we take them on a process of guided discovery. So of all of the professions in the whole world, what should coaches be better at than anybody else on the planet? It's asking questions.
Yeah.
So do we want to ask great questions, or do we want to ask crappy Me Too questions? We want to ask great questions. So we need to know as coaches, what are the most important questions to ask? What are the most great tactical questions, great strategic questions? We need to have these questions at our fingertips. I get asked from my prospects the same 20 questions every week. So do you. It might be in a slightly different pair of pants, but every coach gets asked the same kind of questions. Well, if we know what the questions are that we're going to get, have you ever taken the time to write down the questions that you get and then craft, and I mean craft, in front of a laptop, spend a day writing a response to a question that you get that guides them to think, oh my God, this guy is a real smart guy, right? 99.999% of the coaches I've ever talked to don't.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I just want to highlight, I work with a lot of relationship managers who have done it their whole lives, just in business products, banking products, all of that. And if I'll go through a training with them around the most common objections, and do they have a very scripted plan, like this is best response,
right?
And it's tight, it's concise, and it's effective, most of the times the answer is no.
We call those battle cards. Right?
Yeah.
So when you hear objections, when you hear questions, we get the same 20 questions. We need to know, frontways, backwards, upside down, and underwater, what our response to that is. We need to know those words like learned, like script, because when we then ask that question, their answer, because they don't tell us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, lies in the milliseconds between us answering the question. If we're thinking about, what question should I ask next? We've lost it. We've got to have 20 perfect responses to their questions. We also need to make sure that we ask them questions that make them sit back on their heels and go, man, that's a good question. We've got to get them to do that 3 or 4 times. When we talk to a prospect and for 3 or 4 times, they say to themselves, man, that's a good question. In my pre-call plan, that's one of my objectives.
Yeah. I think I got 3 of those so far in this conversation. I don't know if you were just humoring me.
No. So listen, if I'm a coach and let's just can I give you a quick example? If I'm a coach and I'm talking to a prospect and I say to a prospect, hey, Mr. Prospect, have you ever had a coach before? No. Most of our clients tell us that. Would it make sense if we spend 5 minutes talking about the kind of process it looks like, right? So we get permission to talk about what that process will look like. So that's a really good question. It's a universal yes. There's lots of universal yeses. They're all talked about in the book. If I said to you, Dave, can I tell you my biggest fear? The answer is always yes. Can I tell you what I was thinking about when I was driving here today? The answer is yes. Can I tell you? All right. So when you get permission to ask questions, then when you ask a question, you tell me which of these two questions is better. Let's pretend you're the CEO of an organization. Let's pretend you've got, I don't know, let's say $10 million business for the sake of argument. I don't know. I don't know and I don't care. But if I said to you, hey, Dave, spend, I wouldn't even say that. Here's what a crappy coach would say. So Dave, how long have you been the CEO of ABC Inc.? Is that a good question or a bad question? That's an important question. It's an important question. What kind of markets do you operate in? Awful. Tell me about some of the challenges you're facing right now. God, don't you just want to kill yourself, right? Awful question. I would much rather have a conversation with a CEO that sounds something like, tell me what the board looks like. How many people work in the business? I already know this answer, by the way, so I'll say, hey, Dave, you've probably got about 48 people, and I know they've got 48 people. You've already got 48 people. How do I know that, by the way? Just look on LinkedIn, you can figure that out, right? Or you might say someone between 40 and 60 people on the payroll, right? Yeah. Well, that means standard distribution bell chart. You've probably got some A players, B players, and C players, right? Yeah. Give me the name of one of your C players on the board. Tom. Give me another one. George. These are C players, right? Tom, George, and Mary. How long's Tom been with you? 8 years. How long's Mary been with you? 6 years. How long's George been with you? 3 years. Can I ask you this, Dave? So you've got these 3 C players on your board. You're trying to grow the business. Let me ask you this. Did you hire them like that, or have you made them like that? Right? Now, a CEO he either thinks, I've hired them like that gets him in trouble. I've made them like that gets him in trouble because the culture's screwed. I don't know how to hire people. I'm promoting the wrong people. I don't know how to hire people. I don't have a hiring process. My culture's screwed up, or I don't even know. Yeah. None of those answers are good. So when you say, did you hire them like that, or have you made them like that? Whatever answer he can possibly give says, I need a coach. When I say to him, tell me about, or it could be her, tell me about the dynamics you're seeing in the marketplace right now that's causing you the most concern that might strip away some of your competitive advantage over the next 3 years. And what are you doing about that? Most of the time they go, man, that's a good question, right? Every time they go, man, that's a good question. Never thought about it like that before. That's a great question. Do we go up in their estimation or down? Right, we go up.
Yeah.
Right? So we need those questions at our fingertips because those are the tools of our trade. That's what they are. So back to your original question. So how do we move up the echelons and stuff? Business plan, all of that. Plus, got to get your scripting right. You got to get your belief set right? You've got to think that you're expensive and you're worth it. You've got to think that you're selling a Bentley. If you think you're selling a clapped out Hyundai, you're screwed because what do you charge for a clapped out Hyundai money?
It's interesting when I think about it and I talk about it, whether it's therapists or coaches, there's almost like a market rate and everybody's at some kind of market rate.
But there isn't, because there is a market rate for average.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, like in there, right.
Right. But if you go into a Bentley dealership, well, what's the market rate for a Bentley? There is no such thing. Yeah. And when the guy that, Bentley spend a lot of time finding the right people, right, for their showrooms, right, for their dealerships. Because when somebody walks in and says, how much is that new, GT convertible? and they say it's $325,000. Do you think the Bentley guy flinches and does this and says it's whispers it's $325,000? No. In fact, how does he say it's 300,000, 330? Tell me how he says it's $325,000. You do it now. Describe to me how he says it's that. If you want that machine there, it's $325,000. How does he say it? What you tell me.
I mean, I think it's brand. It's not necessarily the parts and all that.
I don't mean what is it that allows him to say that. I mean, tell me how he positions that price.
It just is what it is. A luxury good, and
it's a bit more than that. He's actually proud of the fact that it's $325,000.
Yeah,
he's actually proud of the fact that it's $325,000. Why? Because it's a Bentley.
Yeah,
because it's a Bentley. So come back to, I believe, and all the people that work for me, because I work hard at it, I tell them, and they believe it, that we are the Bentley of this world. We are the Bentley in this sector. And if we are the Bentley in this sector, when you say it's $325,000 and they go, hold on, I could get 14 Audis for that. You go, the Audi garage is just to go out and go left, and it's 2 blocks down on the left. Because that's not a blue gumball for you.
Yeah.
Right? You want the guy that wants the coach that's the Bentley coach. So this is all, it starts with you.
Yeah, it's all about that mindset and building it for sure.
Yeah. If you believe you're the Bentley of this world, you'll charge Bentley money. And when somebody says, well, will you do it for clapped out Hyundai money? If you say yeah, you're a lunatic.
Well, I don't want to cut us short. We're closing towards the tail end here, but I mean, we could go on for hours. I know, like I could talk about this stuff for hours. You could talk about this stuff for hours. We won't bore the audience with it just yet.
Right.
But I would love to just closing out, like for you, who are you looking to connect with or meet, or what's your ideal maybe blue gumball if there are people out there that are listening or that I could think about or anybody can think about? Who's that?
Well, thank you very much. So clients for me, I'm not overly bothered by sector or segment or anything like that. Typically, my clients are the C-suite, right? Typically, and they're based anywhere in the world, so it's not even geographically based. But anybody that's at the C-suite, typically of organizations that are multiple millions and into billions, right? Who find themselves frustrated or challenged because they had a vision for their organization 5 years ago or 2 or 3 years ago. And the reality doesn't match that vision now. And then they're not quite sure how they got so derailed. And so, they're typically doing well, but they're a little bit frustrated because they're not moving as fast as they would like to. Now, that being said, if there are any coaches out there that say, do you know what, maybe this is the guy that I need to talk to, to coach me how to be a coach. I don't, I coach my coaches and I coach a few other coaches. If you want that, I'll give you to one of my, if you really want me, then of course we'll have a conversation about that, but I'll give you to one of my coaches, right? Because I'm kind of doing some other things right now. But if you're a coach that wants to figure out how to get to the next level, but genuinely wants to do that, because why? Because it's going to take a lot of effort. Because if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you've always got. And to jump that next level doesn't mean farting about the edges. It means doing some hard work, mainly between your ears, to then jump up. So if you fancy, if you always thought you could maybe do a little bit, don't call me. But if you're determined and you're angry that you're nowhere near where you should be, that you're a Bentley, but you can only get Kia prices, then give us a call.
I like it. And maybe I'm just riffing off that a little bit. You've worked with a lot of people at that senior level. Yeah. What's one common theme that you see where they have opportunity for growth, or they're like they really can elevate their game in a certain area or something like that? What are you seeing most commonly?
I think maybe two or three things. Self-awareness, big thing. In other words, they're not as self-aware as they need to be. And, you know, we all know what emotional intelligence is, and that's one of the key components. So self-awareness is a big one. Belief, oftentimes they don't believe, right? They worry too much, but so we've got to work on self-awareness, self-belief, blind spots. I did a talk to 40 leaders on Monday. Last Monday. And I said, who here is perfect? Put your hand up. Obviously, nobody put the hand up. And I said, who here doesn't have leadership blind spots, right? Obviously, nobody put the hand up because they've all agreed that they weren't perfect. So I said, okay, Frank, what are your blind spots? And they don't know because they can't see them because they're blind spots, right? So blind spots, because we've all got them, but we're not aware of them. So I think ego, self-awareness, blind spots, and I guess if I had to do one other thing that most of my leaders need to know, it's consistency. They are inconsistent with their thinking, their actions, their messaging. Consistency is so powerful, and they are so inconsistent.
Yeah, it's interesting. As you're saying that, I mean, that's the average human too. Like a lot of things you just mentioned, that's what we all could be working on, and why a coach would be relevant in all aspects.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah. And they're all human, aren't they?
Yeah.
And they're scared. They're just scared. They're scared of being fired, embarrassed. They're scared of losing their position, losing status. They're terrified. So you got to give them lots of nurturing and lots of cuddles.
Well, I'll just say this was a pleasure. Thank you for your time. Definitely appreciate that. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way? How should they find you, reach out?
Oh, crikey. It's a tricky name, so just take down this number and text me or call me or whatever. You ready?
Go for it.
786-527-0277. 786-527-0277. It's Antonio. Call me, text me, whatever. I'll get back to you when I can.
And just let him know that it came from Unleash the Rush, and you get a 50% discount. No, I'm just kidding.
No, here's the deal I'll do for you. I'll do 2 for the price of both.
Yeah, very good. All right, Antonio, a pleasure. We should do this again sometime, and we'll be talking soon. All right.
Hey, see you. Thank you.
Namaste. Good night.